Right. So I would like to go over some of the use effect and fetching stuff in React. We touched a little bit on it last week, seems a very long time ago. So let's take a look at it now. Before we jump into it, um, any like big areas of stuff you want to go over, or so like things that would prevent you from really getting into this. Anything you'd like to hit or ask me to focus on, I guess, going into it. Crud and post, yeah, we will definitely hit posts, 100%. Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Hmm, that, and we will take a look at this here. So just for to have something to sort of hang off of, I grabbed the excuse me, grab the uh, Pokemon Lab. Uh, Probably won't go through the whole thing. I just want to kind of use it as something to jump off of with the use effect stuff. So, use effect, what is it? I'm just gonna pop that open there, and oh, let's take a look at that. Yeah, that's fine. Um, so fetch, fetch is just a part of JavaScript. Fetch is going to work the same way, no matter if we're using JavaScript or React or Angular, Vue, um, so whatever we like. It's a matter of where we're hooking it into it. And I think we touched on this briefly, but we'll do it from scratch here. One of the things that you're going to be doing pretty much every time for at least this phase is going to be when the page loads, you're going to be making a fetch call and getting some data and doing something with it, probably putting it on the page. So um, that's we're going to hook into the life cycle of our React component. So this is let's just get this kicked off first. Let me run. I think we have stuff in here. Yeah, so I can run this server here. So let me run that server. Yeah, run server. Great, that's going there. I think cool. So we should be able to hit the Pokemon and get some data over here. Bring it up to the right screen. Great. So here's our server we're gonna be getting. So this is just a get all, and we have a list of Pokemon with a lot IDs and names and hit points and a little object with front and back sprites on it. Cool. And if we ask for just one of them, we get Ivysaur here. We can just get that one. Great. So let me pop open then our app as it stands now. So PM start. And hopefully that'll pop open on the same page instead of there we go. The same guff about. There we go. Okay. Great. So this is where we'll be looking at stuff. There's going to be, we'll be putting stuff on the page, but for right now, I just want to see, let's just take a look at the console. So we have data. We have an app. We like to get the data into the app. So yeah. So let's go back to what we have here. Here's our app. I think we're not gonna be doing anything above this Pokemon page here. So this Pokemon page is basically like the root of our app right now as it stands. Might mess with it a little bit later. So the I guess let me talk a little bit about the life cycle thing. I keep using the term life cycle, and it's kind of a holdover from the way that we used to do React stuff when components were more class-based, and we explicitly said when the component does this, when the component does that. But basically, um, the life cycle of a React component, whether it's your root one or something you're rendering down the chain somewhere, basically it's going to create the component, run the function, get some stuff. It's going to attach the component to the DOM. It's going to mount it to the page. Reloading is part of the life cycle, and then dismounting. We don't worry too much about dismounting at this point. This part that we're going to be looking at now is the well, it's going to be loading and re-rendering. Basically, it loads, renders, and really the part we're actually hooking into is the render part, and that is taking whatever's returned from here, or actually running the function and then taking whatever's returned and putting it on the page. So we want, the trick is we want to do something the first time something loads, and only that time. So we have something that we can hook into with here called side effects. Basically, components are functions, which means they should be more or less pure functions, meaning they take some stuff in, the props, they put some stuff out, which is the HTML that we return here, and that should be it. It shouldn't do anything outside. However, we can do things called side effects, which do things that aren't just taking stuff in and rendering. So we're going to use a hook for that called useEffect. It gets imported up here by name from React. Basically, useEffect is a way to say, hey, I want you to do something sometimes. And it takes two arguments. It's going to take a function, and it's going to take a dependency list. Oh, dependency list. For our purposes right now, it's going to be an empty array. The purpose of this is when our component function runs, useEffect says run this function when something in this list in state has changed. So if we have const thing set thing is useState 0. If we put thing in here, that's telling, hey, useEffect run anytime thing changes. We're not going to worry about that too much right now. The main thing we're going to be using this for is to say it's going to run the first time it runs, and then since this dependency array is empty, it's not going to run again ever. It's only running the first time. So that's just a little bit of syntax we're going to be putting in here for now, and we can play with it some more when we need to do some more complicated stuff. On page load, yeah. This effectively is on page load. Basically, the first time it renders and puts something on the page. So this is how we get the on page load effect. Yeah. Cool. So this function here, usually written inline as an arrow function, do some stuff, and I have a little, oh yeah, do some stuff. So this is where we're going to be doing whatever we want to do the first time the page loads, or technically the first time the component mounts, but effectively the first time the page loads. So we can have it do anything. We can just have it, console log loaded, and then it will do that. Boom, great. And again, this is a function that runs, so we can do it inline here. We can write a function externally if that makes more sense to our brains. I'm just going to do it inline here because that's how you're going to see it most of the time. And we're really only running that function at once here, which may change as we make stuff more complicated. So since we want to load some data in the first time, we're going to want to do that when the page loads. And here's a great place to do it. So fetch works exactly the same as it does in vanilla JavaScript. We can do fetch. Our API is going to be Pokemon API, and then we'll do some stuff. Then we'll turn the response into JSON, and then we'll do something with the JSON. I'm just going to console log it right now because we don't have anything else written. And so let's set up our Pokemon API. We can set it inside or outside. That's going to be our localhost, right? It's going to be this URL here. Great. So we've set up our Pokemon API to hit that URL. useEffect is saying the first time we see this component on page load, basically do whatever's in this function. In this function, we're doing a fetch to that API. It's just a get, and then we're turning it into JSON, and we're just going to console log it out. And let's see what happens. Look at that. Is that a real error? Or is that leftover? It's leftover. So cool. We have our data on page load. That's getting data on page load. Before we do anything with the data, what questions do we have about like any of this lifecycle stuff or fetching or anything like that? Feeling pretty good about it? Cool. Yeah, this aside from the useEffect stuff, this is all stuff you've done before. So now we want to get that data on the page. And that's going to be a two-step process, right? Since we are not explicitly rendering things to the page by saying create element, attach element, element text equals blah, 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 we are doing stuff the React way, which means that we have some data. When that data changes, that data gets rendered onto the page in a way that we tell it to. So it's more declarative. And we have a bunch of things that I haven't really looked at in 15 weeks. So we'll find out how to get that on the page first. But the first step is to getting it into the application in a useful way, which means that we're going to be putting it in state here. So let me tighten that up a little bit there. So what does our data look like? Our data looks like an array of objects. It looks like this. So let's make some state that looks like an array of objects, or an array to start off with. So oh boy, the problem with Pokemon and like sushi and stuff is the pluralization. Yeah, Megan.
Sorry, I have one quick question, kind of going back a little about where you decided to put this useEffect function. For me, I'm struggling with like where exactly to put the state. And what's the reason like you put it on Pokemon page as opposed to app, like the parent?
Great question. So basically you want state to live as low as possible, where just because of the way we have to pass things around. So we could just as easily put it up in app here, but that means I'd be passing state down to Pokemon page as a prop. And when I want to change stuff, Pokemon page would have to call a function to change stuff up here. The way we're doing state now. So right now, since this data is probably going to be used by the form and maybe the search and definitely the collection, this is the kind of lowest down the tree that we can put the data and have it available to all the stuff that's going to use it. App doesn't seem to be doing anything except just containing this page. So app probably doesn't need to even know about the data. It just needs to know, hey, I've got this Pokemon page here. I'm going to display whatever's on it. And Pokemon page is the one that actually cares about the data right now. Is that cleared up a little bit?
Yeah. And then you're saying like we send down the the Pokemon data to those child components, and then whenever we want to like actually change it, we're sending it back up for the state.
Yeah,
for that. Okay, so it makes it like one less step to get there.
Passing stuff around. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Cool, so let's get it into that state. I'm going to call it Pokemon's Pokemons set Pokemons just because of plurals. And we'll use useState here. And since it is an array, we're going to set it to an empty array. Because the first time this is going to load, we're going to be passing that down to Pokemon Collection, which I assume is going to be doing something with it. And since it's an array, it should have an empty array to do stuff with. And in fact, we can see if we want to. Let's see what happens if we console log Pokemons. So we should just get our empty array here because that's our state, except we're also console logging the other thing, so that's fine. There it is. There's our state. So let's go ahead and set this in state. Since I have a setter here, I can just use that function. And this is the same as saying, here's our data, like that. Because we're just whatever is coming back from the fetch is getting passed to this function. So, and it's a little bit easier to read. We can say get the data, then set Pokemons with the data we're getting back. And so this is replacing that empty array. We're not adding to it or pushing to it or anything. We're just replacing that array with a new array, which changes the value of Pokemons. Once Pokemons is changed, we're re-rendering, which means we're running this function again. Which means we're going to console log out that state. We're going to hit that useEffect again, but since we're not changing anything, or since we have an empty dependency array here, it's not going to run it the second time. If that array wasn't there, and I guarantee someone, maybe multiple people will do this at some point, forget this array, and then your page is just going to keep loading and loading and loading and loading and loading because it's going to load, change the state, useEffect, load, change the state, useEffect, re-render, load. So this keeps that from going into that loop. And we should be able to see here. Let me just reload it for clarity. Here's our empty array the first time through, and here is our Pokemon array the second time through. So we've got our data into state now, which means we can do something about it. But yeah, remember the first time it's always going to render with that empty state because useEffect is asynchronous. It's going to run stuff, send off the fetch, and then eventually when it comes back, it's going to get our stuff there. Megan, yeah.
Sorry, one more question.
Good.
So in the useEffect, you're setting set Pokemons as that second dot then, which is setting it in state. That automatically like assigns it to Pokemons, right? Because they're like tied together. Okay, so you don't even have to do it like set Pokemons, parenthesis Pokemons for anything to happen. It'll just be okay.
Yeah, cool. And again, since this is a function, we can have it. This is a function that's doing basically the same thing. It's taking the data we're getting back and passing it to this function. Since it is passing the data to the function, we can just pass it directly to the function instead of having an intermediary there.
Okay. And whenever we use Pokemons, like that variable from now on, it'll have all that data.
Exactly.
Okay. I like gathered that from the labs, but I just it's good to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah. And again, set Pokemons is also asynchronous. So it's sending a request to React to change that value, and then React will change that value pretty quickly, rerender the page.
Okay. Thank you.
Kimberly.
I'm sorry to ask this because I know it's I'm a completely visual learner, and I had a distraction for a second when you showed us what happened when you loaded the page after it created the array. Can you go back and show again?
Yeah. So here is our, let's just put that console back in here.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. So the first time it's going to load with an empty one. It's going to log that. Then we're going to use effect, send the fetch off. This fetch is going to come back, pass the data into set Pokemons. Set Pokemons is going to say, hey, react. We got a new array for you. It's going to change the state. When state changes, it re-renders, which means it reruns the function. And we're going to console log that again. And since we have our empty array here, use effect will not run the second time. So we should get empty array and then that stuff. I'm going to make sure we get a reload. There we go. We got our empty array and we've got our big array.
Thank you.
You bet.
It's going to take fingers on keyboard, but thank you.
Yeah, and like this little pattern here, like this is the thing that is going to happen pretty much every time, and the only thing that's going to change is the API you're hitting and what the name of the state is. So this is what this is going to look like for most of the time for your initial page load. Cool. So let's use that data now. So since we have our data in Pokemons, let me take a look at what we have down here. So here's our Pokemon collection. Card group. So I bet we're going to put Pokemon cards in here and pass stuff to there. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to kind of just shoot stuff down here and see, play along as we play along. I'm going to call a prop called Pokemons and set that to our Pokemons. So the Pokemon collection, I'm passing down this array with this prop here. Go into the Pokemon collection and we'll just immediately destructure that out. And so here, I bet, is where we want to do a map. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to do a Pokemon's map. Book. So each one of these is going to turn into a Pokemon card. Oh yeah, we're importing it here. Cool. Pokemon card. We're going to have a key that is ID. And then I'm just gonna send in the Pokemon, I guess. Okay. So now we should have a map of all of these Pokemon cards, with each one being one of these objects here, which has a ID, name, hit points, and the sprites object. So let's just go into those cards, and I'm gonna destructure a Pokemon out. I just want to, for starters, just console log what I'm getting into each one. So the way I've set it up here, I would expect that our Pokemon page is going to do our fetch and our load, set state. We're passing in the big list of monsters here. In the collection, we are mapping through those to create a card for each one and passing in that object to each one. And then we'll do stuff with it down here. But right now, I just want to console log out the data. So I expect to see 150 or 151, however many console logs happen with each. There we go. Look at that. Hey, we have a whole bunch of empty things there, so that's a good sign. And it looks like we have 100 and 149, I guess. So we know that fetch is happening. It's passing the array to the collection, and the collection is mapping over correctly, throwing those in there. Cool. I'm going to take that H1 up. So it's probably not supposed to be there. And so now this is just a matter of passing, we've got our prop in here. So I'm going to fill stuff in. We have our name. Assume his name. Yeah, name. HP, great. it's just called HP. Yep. And image. Yeah, great. So let's give it an image source. And I'm just gonna put the front right now. Sprites front, I think it is. Pokemon sprites front. Cool. And alt is just gonna be the Pokemon name. Okay, that should look a little bit better. Hey, look at that. We've got all our buddies there. That's just passing stuff down. I'm not going to do the front and back thing right now because that's just frosting. So this is how you would do your use effect, fetch, set state, pass state down, map over your state, and then in each one display stuff. Megan, yeah, question.
Do you mind going back to Pokemon collection and just so like you passed in the big array of all the Pokemons from the parent of this one, which is the page. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. And then in Pokemon collection, you're mapping over that array. And then for each item, you're sending that to Pokemon card. Can you describe the Pokemon equals and then the object Poke, just like that exactly? Is that Pokemon like the original prop you sent in, or is that just a name? Like it could be anything.
For in the map function here?
Yeah, so like where it says Pokemon card and then the next Pokemon, is that something that could be changed, like that name?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So sorry, I meant the actual like that one. Yeah, that name there. Is that because it's the prop.
Yeah, so as long as that matches up with what we're pulling out here, yeah, you can call it whatever you want. I'm just calling it what it is.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I got a little confused.
It's confusing. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just yeah, on the card from the video I have been watching. I just wondering which one would be prepared. Would you just like put the properties to the object, like the like you have the bracket of the like the name HP and the bracket and then equal to Pacman that thing, and then you don't have to like
are you asking about like destructuring the parts out of the data here? So if I did like const name HP sprites equals Pokemon. So now since I've pulled these out of that object, then I can just use them there like that.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
And ideally it should work just the same. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, you can totally do that, especially if you have a bunch of properties like this is, I would probably do this in a real app like this. It's just easier to read. Yeah. Great question.
Okay, and I have another question. When I see that for the line 13, it's the right that front, I would assume that we're going to do another map, like over the array. When I was looking at like, can you go to like API link?
This one here.
Yeah, and I was thinking we were going to do another map, like because it looked like we have to do another one, but it's not the way.
Yeah, so this is we wouldn't do a map here because this is an object, not an array.
Okay.
And so this is just saying, oh, hey, we have images for the front and the back sprites, just image. So yeah, that's just like saying, oh,
Okay.
we have, sprite dot front, sprite dot back for those two images.
So we will just do map one.
So you can't map over an object, so we wouldn't be mapping over that.
Yeah, and that I understand. But let's say if there's like another array.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah,
if it is array instead of update, we'll do map, right?
yeah. So if there's like what do they call them? Type or element that they have. So it'd be, oh, it's gonna be earth, poison, fairy, or whatever. Then we would map over those and display those. Yeah.
Okay. So it will be like below like we would do it under like Pacman collection and then do it below the
If each Pokemon had like a list of types, then in here we would say like, oh, here's our types, and then we do types map
okay.
there.
So we have to do it under card, not under Pacman collection, right?
Yeah, if it's in each one, so if we look at a single one, this is the data we're passing to each card. So if we had an array,
got it.
we would map there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Holly, did I see a question there? It could be anything.
I had a hand up for a second, but it might be something I just go over during office hours. Just basically my sprites.front isn't reading, it's showing as undefined, so we can talk about that later.
Are you getting the name and the HP?
Yeah, both of those were working. It was just like sprites.front that it's giving me an issue with.
And you're grabbing the sprites out like this? Or are you doing like Pokemon.sprites?
I was doing it Pokemon.sprites.
Huh.
Although
if you do like a console log up here, does it show all the like what we expect here? This stuff?
No. It's showing weird shit. So yeah, that's the issue. I'll figure it out.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, Megan.
Could you just quickly go over that const and then name HP sprites equals like what? Could you just describe that a bit more?
Yeah, so this is just destructuring an object again, just the same as we're doing up here, because this is basically, if we take in props up here, that's the same as saying const Pokemon equals props. So we'd be destructuring that one out of there. And so destructuring just means we have an object. That object has keys. So we have name, HP, and sprites, like you can see here. And so that's just saying if an object has keys that we know the names of, we can use this syntax. We can put curly brackets and we can create constants or variables with the names that match those keys. And we just do it like that. So this is basically the same as saying, const name equals Pokemon equals Pokemon name XP equals.
Oh, okay. Could you have, I'm trying to, because I've seen it before in another lab where they up in the Pokemon card and then in that prop, they had it as name, comma, HP sprites. Could you have sent it down like that and it would have been the same thing?
Yeah, so if we do it like that.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, we can totally do that.
Okay. Okay.
I think so. It's giving me guff for some reason. Oh, that is, sorry. That's if props has multiple things. So we would pull multiple things out of props. I don't think you could double nest them like that. Yeah, but if we had like Pokemon, trainer, location, and all that, then we would pull those multiple props out.
Okay.
Yeah,
this is a way to kind of, what's that? I'm sorry.
Okay, because props is just an object, just a regular object. So we'd be doing this to that if it had multiple things in it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Other questions? Cool. Yeah, Asani.
Hey, real quick on what you just went through. If you go back to the name HP sprites. So basically you're saying you can't, well, so because sprites, for example, is like a nested, um, well, it's a nested like array, I guess, in that case, or nested object.
It's an object.
So that could, in theory, be like its own prop if it were like sorry, I'm trying to figure out what I'm trying to ask here. It's like, all right, so if you have separate data sets that have their own objects, then they can be separate props, like up top in line 4.
Yeah, so if we were passing in different things like trainer equals, if we get a trainer object in here, then we would
Got it.
Pokemon trainer like that.
Got it. Cool. And then trainer like would have its own name, its own XYZ. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Awesome. What else we have? Cool. This is like what we have here. This is the basic setup that you're going to see in almost everything you do. So setting up something to display stuff, getting that data, and passing it down. That's, yeah, you're going to see that everywhere. Kimberly, yeah.
I'm sorry, I confused myself. Can you go back to Pokemon collection for a second? Where it says Pokemon equals Pokey, Pokey can be anything, right?
Yeah, so this is map.
It can be sandwich.
A function. Yeah, it could be sandwich, could be giraffe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, arrow functions are just regular functions, so it's the same as saying like function something parameter.
Thank you. I just wanted to double check that because I started looping it in my head and I'm like, that's not right.
Yeah. Other questions about this part? Cool. So that's how we would do a get, getting information from our API and putting it on the page by passing that information down as props to components and mapping over them if there's more than one. Sweet. We have a Pokemon form up here, right? We do. Look at that. Oh, I think have I already used this before? Oh, no. Awesome. So here's our form. This lab is using Semantic UI, which is a library that has components that have some functionality and like styling associated with them. There's nothing special about that there, like this container or if we look at the form, probably has, yeah, so like form group, form input. Those are just the same as like if we look at how it renders out, it renders out just to regular old input fields. Which you can see in here. Boom, boom, input from, there we go. So these render out just to labels and inputs. They just have like some structure put around them to make them easier to style. But when you see stuff like this, or later on during projects, maybe write stuff like this, these are literally just regular input fields, regular form. Don't let these throw you. So we're still working with just plain old regular forms and inputs. They just have a slightly different thing because we're using a styling library. That's frankly unnecessary here. So that being said, right now we have a form with an on submit that will probably reload our page, right? Because we don't have, do we have? Oh, maybe this has maybe form has, maybe semantic has an automatic, don't do the default, which is confusing. But we would have prevent default there. If you're not using semantic, which you probably won't be. Cool. So we have a regular form here. It has a submit event that we're catching, and we're just doing a console log. So let's talk about what it takes to create a new thing. How do I limit how many are displayed? Do you mean in the like the Pokemon list?
Yeah, if you only wanted to see like the first 4,
Yeah.
5 or 10.
Yeah. Great question.
But
You would,
if you want to hold off until after the form's done, I'm good with that.
yeah. This is we can do the quick answer here and then go into it maybe if we get to the sort of stuff.
Okay.
So this Pokemon collection, its only job is to take a list of Pokemons and display them. Where it gets those from, what that list looks like, it does not care. All it knows is I'm taking a list of Pokemons and I'm going to display them. That's it. So that means if we want to change the way that looks, we would change what we're sending in. We have this whole list of Pokemons. So, if we wanted to sort this list or filter it or slice it down to a certain number, we could do, how would you see the first couple hundred or first 10 of an array? Slice. We would do slice, start at 0, go to 10. And that would show us the first 10. So basically the short answer is by sending fewer into it. And we'll look at the Sushi Saga lab tomorrow that will play with this in more detail. But short answer is just send it fewer Pokemon. However you do that is up to you.
Thank you.
Azani, yeah.
Hey, one thing to add to that while you're still on that, if I wanted to show a limit of 10, but it was a random 10 out of the full set, how would we do that here?
You would write a function that just random 10 and return an array and send that array in.
Got you.
Yeah, so Pokemon collection is just going to show whatever array of Pokemon you send into it. How you arrange that array, that's just JavaScript. That's up to you. Yeah. Since people always want to do games and games often have cards, and cards often want to like draw a hand or something, the best way to do that is to shuffle your array and then just take the top cards off the stack. But we can talk about that in depth later on. Awesome. Let's take a look at this form again. Right now we're just submitting stuff, doing our console log, right? So what is it gonna take to get us into this form? So first thing I'm gonna do is make it reacty, right? And that means instead of keeping our data in the form in the HTML where who knows what's going to happen to it, I want to bring that data into React, which means I'm going to set up state for all this stuff. We have a name, an HP, an image URL, and a back image URL. So I want to control this form. And I want to do that by setting up state. And I think I'm going to, yeah. So I could set up 4 states. I could set up a state for name, a state for HP, a state for front image, a state for back image. Thinking one step ahead, I'm going to be doing a post. So at some point, I'm going to be probably doing it from up here because I'm going to want to update this data here. And when I do a post, I want to submit data that looks like the data that we're going to be putting in there, which means when we do a post, we're going to be creating a new object. That object is going to have a name, HP, and another object inside it that has sprites front and back. So this is kind of what I want my state to look like as well. Instead of having different states and then constructing the object, maybe I want to do that in place. let's play with it and see if that makes sense for us. So in our form, I'm going to set a state. I'm going to call it new Pokemon and set new Pokemon. And I'm going to use state for this. And I want this to be the same shape as the thing that I'm making, which is an object. This object has another object inside of it that I might want to change too. So I think what I'm going to do is have an empty object with a sprites array that is an empty object. Or sorry, I'm not going to make an empty object. I'm going to make an object here with a sprites that has an empty object. Because when I set this state, I want to make sure I don't want to have to check it each time. So I'll just say, I know this object is going to have a sprites object inside, and I'll add the other stuff as we go along. So that's going to be our initial state, which will match up because there is nothing in the form. So I want to do the fully controlled form, which means that I want to, when the inputs change, I want to take the value that's in there and put them in the right place in the state. And I want to make sure the value of the forms matches up with the state. So we can do the second part first because it's a little bit simpler. Here's our name. I'm just going to do value equals new Pokemon name. So I'm expecting this new Pokemon object to have the same shape as this, which means it'll be an object with a name. And now I can do the same thing for HP. Close off that curly. And I can do the same thing with these. I'm going to need to dive into that sprite object, which is why I have that sprite there, because otherwise I'd be trying to get front of undefined. Let's copy that for here. So now this should look exactly the same. Cool. Great. Just to clear, I'm going to take off that console there. Great. Cool. So now I know that the values of the forms are always going to equal the value of the states. Now I just need to do the other way around. When the form changes, I'm going to update the state. And so that's going to be an unchange event. And that's going to take the event, and I'm just going to. So here's where I'm going to need to do a little bit of stuff. I'm going to do this inline first, and then we'll think about pulling it out. I want to set new Pokemon. I want to set it to a new object. I'm going to spread out the current new Pokemon, and I'm going to set the name to be target value. And that's a mouthful. Let me put that on a new line so we can slip this. A little bit easier to read. Cool. So when this changes, when the value of this changes, I'm going to run this event handler. This event handler is going to take the event. It's going to call our set new Pokemon. And when we do set new Pokemon, it's going to set the entire object that we're looking at here that's shaped like this one. And so when we set the new Pokemon, we're going to create a new object. We're going to spread out whatever's in the current new Pokemon, and we're just going to add the name. And that's going to be the value of the field that through the event, which is this one. Megan, yeah.
Can you explain more about why you have to spread out the new Pokemon as opposed to just like doing new Pokemon dot name equals event target value?
Because we want all the current values that are also in there. So it's going to have the HP and sprites and everything. So we want to make sure that whatever else is in there is going to stay in there.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is all because in React states, we have to, we're not changing the object that's in there, we're replacing it with a new one. And that means the new one has to look exactly like the old one, just with that one part changed.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. So we're gonna do the same thing for the rest of them. Let me get myself some space to work here. So we're gonna do an on change here. And I'm gonna set the HP. On change here, and I'm going to set. So I'm gonna have to spread out sprites as well. And now I'm thinking maybe this wasn't a great idea. Maybe it makes more sense to keep 4 states instead of managing one object like that. Do I think it's hard enough to actually do it? I think I do. So I'm gonna refactor all this. Instead of having 1 state, I'm gonna have the 4 states here. Kimberly.
Real quick on line 21, you just spread out the new Pokemon and then said name is e.target.hp. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. That's what you get for copying and pasting. So yeah, so this, this is a fine way to do it. It is a little bit ugly to read. And if that extra sprites object wasn't in there, I could write a simple function to help me out here. Instead, I think I'm going to make it 4 different, since there are only 4, I think I'm just gonna make it 4 different states. If there was like 50, then I'd figure something else out. But right now there's only 4, so I'm gonna do it a little bit more simply, because yeah. So I'm gonna do we're just gonna do name and set name. That's gonna be an empty state there. We're gonna do the same with HP and set HP. And that's probably, we want to keep that a number, I guess. So we'll make that a number. I'm gonna do front, set front, and back, and set back. Great. And so now, instead of doing all this spreading into a new object, I'm gonna say set name is the target value. And get rid of some of these curlies. Great. So that's already a little bit easier to read. I'm going to take a chance and copy and paste here. It's going to be set HP to target value. Down here, I'm going to set front. And here I'm going to set back. Cool. So now we have 4 states, which means that when we do our post, we'll construct this object out of those 4 states. Cool. So now this form is completely controlled. In theory, new Pokemon is not defined, right? Because value is going to be and HP and front and back. Great. HP 0, right? Should I change that to empty string? I don't know. I'm going to. Because let me take a look at what the data looks like in here. Yeah, see, it's a number in there. I feel like it should be a number out here too. I'm going to keep it a 0 for now. Cool. And so one of the neat things, if you have your React tools installed, which you should, we should be able to select our form here and see what all of our values are, right? Where is our Pokemon form? So now we have our 4 states here. And as we type stuff in, those states will change. 20. And so if we set those states programmatically, which we technically are here, they would reflect the state. So we have our data in our JavaScript instead of relying on what's in the form. Bulbasaur is missing. Yeah, that's what we're about to add. Cool. So this is a fully controlled form. This is kind of stuff we did during the event stuff last week. Do we have questions about getting our data set up here? Cool. So now that we have our state set up, we already have our on submit set up. So here, all we need to do is do a post like we normally would. So first I'm going to put my object together. I'll do new Pokemon in here. So this is going to be an object. It's going to have a name, it's going to have an HP, and it's going to have sprites. And that's going to be, we can just have front and back. And because these match up, the variable name is going to match up with the key name, name, HP, front and back. We can use this little shortcut here. This is the same as saying name is name. HP is HP, and so on. It's just a little nicer. Cool. And just to make sure we got the right thing here, let's console log out our object. And so we should see this in our console when we hit so it's a Bulbasaur, HP, I don't know, 60, 80, 40 probably. Image URL, I bet we can. Let's open here. I bet if we do this, hey, yeah, XRs. Do that, and this would be back, I think. If we submit this, this is what our object looks like, and that's the right shape for our data here. So I feel good about submitting that. And we're not explicitly setting the ID because we're going to get that from the JSON. It's probably going to give us ID 151. I don't think we have, but as far as we're concerned, if we wanted to keep the number separately, like the Pokemon index number, we would keep that separately from the database index number. But yeah, right now let's do our fetch. And this is going to be a post. Fetch to our, we don't have the API in here, do we? I'm just going to grab that here. I'm going to fetch to our Pokemon API. And since we're doing a post, I need to pass it that object. Let's give it a method, and method is post. Let's give it our headers. Sets JSON content type is also application JSON. And now we can give it our body. And again, since HTTP is a string-based protocol, we need to turn our JavaScript object into a JSON string, and we can stringify that with the JSON library. Body, let's say body. JSON stringify new Pokemon. Cool, so that is going to send that fetch there. Let's catch the result and turn it into JSON. And then let's just console log what we get back. Cool. So this is a fetch exactly the same as what we did in phase one. There should be nothing new, no surprises here. So let's see what happens. There's our console. Let's just reload real quick. There's a Bulbasaur, 40 HP. Awesome. Submit. Cool. And this is what comes back. Right. We should have an ID. Where's our ID? ID 151. Yeah, just like I thought. Cool. And if we look at our data here, at the very end, we should have a brand new baby Bulbasaur. There it is. Cool. We have one more step to go, but what questions do we have about submitting the form here before we do the last bit? Kimberly, yeah.
You can go back to data for a real quick second and go back to the Bulbasaur object.
This one?
Yeah. Why is the ID outside?
Outside. What do you mean?
Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. I was misreading that.
Yeah. It's just
not outside. It's underneath the sprites. I was like, wait, no, that doesn't make sense. But thank you.
Megan, yeah.
Do you mind going back to where you're putting this post? Okay, so like you're putting both the on submit and the fetch post in line of that form component, because in the form component, that's where we're actually like where the form is being submitted, right?
Yeah. And we can break this
Okay.
into a function, function handle submit. And then just move all this stuff out here. That's probably what I would really do. And I'll submit is going to be handle submit. Got all my curlies right. That should do exactly the same thing. Yeah. So
Okay.
that just makes that nicer.
And oh, okay. I guess I read it wrong. What component are we in right now? The
form component. Yeah. Oh, sorry. The Pokemon form component. So that's
okay.
Sits up here.
Pokemon form. Okay. Sorry, I'm just like, it's hard for me to think about where it's nested.
There's a lot of stuff.
So, okay. So Pokemon form has the fetch or the post, but the actual submission of the new Pokemon is happening in form. Is that right? Or did I?
So, yeah. Pokemon form is this whole component here. And then the form is part of the Pokemon form. Yeah. And it's capital F because it's a styled component in but it's just a regular form.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. A little less space. Anna, yeah, and
could you scroll up to the top of the Pokemon form page? Okay, so I was just double checking. I wasn't sure if you had called the API from the page or if you had recreated it.
But... Yeah, I just copied it there. In a real application, I might pass it down as a prop. More likely, this is one thing that you might use context for. But if I was doing a real application, I'd probably be using something like recoil, which we can talk about later, that lets you access data without passing it around as much. But yeah, for right now, just to get it working, I just pasted it there. Yeah, because like if this changed, now it's 3002, and I changed it here, and then this form would stop working. And you only want to change things in one place and have it go everywhere. Ideally. But yeah, for just to get it working right now, just copy pasted. Other questions before we hook up the last piece? Cool. So this is a way to do it. Again, a million ways to do everything. I'm handling all of this stuff inside the form just because it feels good to kind of keep it local there. We could also have our handle submit passed in from the Pokemon page, right? Do the post up there. All we would need to do is give it this new Pokemon, or even just the 4 pieces of state. But I like doing this down here for now. What we're going to need to do, though, instead of console logging it, we're going to need to pass it back up so a Pokemon page can add it to state. So I'm not taking anything in right now. So let's do, I'm going to call it, oh God, it's something that is going to be, I'm going to call handle response for now. So this is something that when the Pokemon form does its thing, it's going to do a fetch. After it fetches whatever function we pass to it, it's going to send the response to that. It doesn't care if you're setting it in state or just like alerting it or sending it somewhere else. All it knows is it's my job to take this information, submit it, and then when I submit it, I'm going to send whatever I get back to this function. So let's give it a function. Handle response equals. And so now let's make a function called add new Pokemon, I guess. Pokemon. Cool. So let's write that function here. Let's just do it. Let's do it here. And so since we are calling it with the data that we're just console logging out, we're calling this function with our data, our Pokemon object. So I'm just going to call it new Pokemon. Is that already used somewhere? I don't think so, right? Not in here. Cool. So that is going to be a function here. Right now, I'm just going to console log it just to verify that we are getting the right stuff. I'm just going to put the same stuff in there, maybe. I'll just put garbage in there. That should console log out our garbage after submitting it. Great. That's what I want to see from our Pokemon page. If we look at our DB.json, it should have garbage in the end. It sure does. And if we look on our page, we should have nothing because we haven't added it to state yet. Great. So let's go ahead and add it to state. However, if we do reload this page, we do have our garbage and our Bulbasaur because we did put it in the data. So let's get rid of those right now. Cool, back to our nice data. So Pokemon form, we're done with Pokemon form. Pokemon form has done its job. It's taken our data, put it in state. When we hit submit, it submits it. When the submission comes back, it gives us a new object, and we're going to pass that object a handle response. Pokemon form has done its job as far as it's concerned. It doesn't care about anything that happens outside of itself. So now, up here, all we need to do is add this to state. We have a new Pokemon. We're going to just use our set Pokemons. So we're going to, since we can't just add it to our current object and have state. So like in vanilla JavaScript, you'd probably do like, oh, Pokemon's, push new Pokemon. And then we'd have to, not new promise, new Pokemon. And then we'd have to do our rendering by hand. Instead, we're just going to use the set state, and then that's going to set it. And then when the state changes, it's going to re-render. The trick is that we can't update the state with a push or something. We have to replace the state. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to replace the state with a new array. We're going to spread out the current array. Okay, Pokemons. And we're going to add our new Pokemon at the end. So once that is set, it's going to set it with all the Pokemons that are already in there. It's going to add the new one. The state will change. When the state changes, it will re-render. Since useEffect has its don't do anything button there, it's not going to do anything new. And we should, after we add it to the database without reloading the page, just have it added to the page. And in fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to reverse these so they go on the front instead of on the back. So I have to scroll down to the bottom. Great. So this is going to smack our new Pokemon at the front of the array and re-render it. Let's get our Bulbasaur in there. And hope for the best. Hey, look at that. There's our Bulbasaur up there. If we look at our data, should be up front. Oh, it should be in back. If we reload it, it's going to be at the end because we're not displaying it the same. But yeah, so that's how we do that. We're just updating state, and React takes care of everything else. And that is the full posting a new thing cycle. It's a lot of moving pieces. Megan, yeah.
Sorry to go back to that Pokemon form, but could you just, I think where I'm getting caught up, do you mind scrolling down?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the form that you're adding the on submit to, that's just an actual form. That's not a child component, right?
Yeah, it is a child component, but it's a child component defined by Semantic UI React, which is actually just a form.
Oh.
Dive down into here and see it just turns into a regular form element.
Oh, okay, that's where I'm getting.
Yeah, so
I must have missed that. Sorry.
Here it's just a regular old form. This is just a capital F form component that comes from Semantic UI that outputs a form with some styling.
Okay. In the challenge or whatever, are we expected, because I know there's a form component to it, are we using this Semantic UI or just like building a form?
This is I don't know why this is still here. We should just be using regular forms right now, but yeah, challenge will definitely not be using Semantic.
Okay, so down at the bottom, if that thing wasn't there, you would just like be building a form basically.
Yep, exactly. And on the challenge, I'm pretty sure the form is already going to be there. You just have to hook it up. So
okay.
You don't have to build it yourself.
Okay, thank you. Because it looked like a component, but I was like, where is that component? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's just coming from Semantic UI React.
Thank you.
Cool. Other questions about hooking up the form and doing all that stuff?
No, but can you scroll down 3 lines?
Mm-hmm.
Got a problem with a curly brace, couldn't figure it out.
It's always curly braces. Azani, yeah.
Yeah, quick thing about the capital F form component. So the sort of way that you can import that from the Semantic UI React, that's pretty much something that's like available to do in all React applications. Like that's just kind of a part of the library.
Yeah, so you would have to import it from npm basically. Where is it in here? Is it in here? It's got to be in here somewhere.
Oh, right. These are the specific like.
So we
Yeah,
do.
it was in there.
Install. Is it?
Yeah.
My brain's just not seeing it.
Go up. It's on the.
Oh, there it is, right there. Yep.
Oh,
yeah. So these two, you would say, npm install Semantic UI React, npm install Semantic UI CSS. Then that would make that available to you. And there's Semantic UI, there's Material, there's Bootstrap, there's a million CSS libraries that you can bring like that. Semantic just happens to be the one we're using here.
got it.
Yeah. And it doesn't do a whole lot. It just lines those up like that. So gotta make it pretty, I guess. Other questions about all of this? We will not be going over delete during this lecture or patch, but they work exactly the same as in vanilla JavaScript. You would just be update, you do your post, you do your fetch with patch or delete, and then do the same thing updating your state. And those will not be on the code challenge. So yeah, good to know. But don't worry about it until you need to use it for your project. Yeah. Yeah, the code challenge should just have a get and a post on it. Azani, is that a new hand?
Yeah, quick point of clarification. So this Pokemon page is the parent component to the form, to the Pokemon form.
Mhm.
So you're writing that handle response in as a prop and then passing it into the Pokemon form component.
Yep.
All right, cool.
Yeah, like 2/3 of React is just wiring. It's just making sure your states are in the right place and passing your data around. And sometimes your data is a function. Cool. If we're feeling okay-ish about this, I just want to touch on the last little bit here, where we can filter here. We have a search component as well. All the search has is that field here, the input. It's not even in a form, which is fine because we're not submitting it. We're just typing into it. So what I would like to do is when I type into this field, only show the Pokemon that have that string at the beginning. So I'm going to start off by controlling this form here. So controlling search. I'll call it filter actually. And set filter. Starting with nothing. I'm going to set up my controlling stuff. Value equals filter. And on change equals boom, set filter value. Yeah, Azami.
Yeah, did you do like a keyboard shortcut to have that use state automatically pop up at the top, or when you type it in, it just like imports it?
It's just part of the.
Okay, got it.
I don't think I have anything special installed. I think it just happens when you tab it out.
Cool, that's cool.
Code. Yeah, definitely saves typing, and that works with components too. I think most of the time.
Okay.
It doesn't work enough to type it yourself, but
yeah,
nice little.
Cool.
Cool. So we have this little search thing working here. We've got the state here. I think I'm actually going to make a little function here. Handle change. Because we're going to need to do one more thing with it. So we're definitely going to need to set the state there. I'm also going to want to, you know what? Do I want to set state here? I don't know. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to need to handle filter, I guess, with, you know what? Let's just do that. Backing up, I'm gonna pass handle change in, I think, as a prop. And so I won't need that state there. So what this is doing is it's going to be passing the event in here. Instead of the event, I'm going to pass in the value, I think. Get value. So now we're going to give it a function. We're not even using state anymore. We're going to give it a function from outside. And when someone types into here, it's going to call that function with whatever's in the field. And so here is where we need to pass in a handle change. And I'm going to do set filter or set filter. Yeah, I'm going to do set filter. We don't have filter yet. I'm going to add a filter state. Great. So now passing in our setter here. So whenever we type into here on change, it's going to whatever is passed into handle change, it's going to pass it whatever's in our field here. That just happens to be set filter. So this filter should be matching whatever's in our form or in our input. And we can verify that by maybe fixing this error. Oh, take that out there. Great. We can verify that by looking at our components. And we've got, we don't care about the form, we care about the search. Search has that. We care about our Pokemon page. There we go. So our Pokemon page, that second state there is going to be our filter. One of the peculiarities about state is that it doesn't keep it by name. It's just like, I've got a state here, and the code worries about the rest. But if we type stuff into here, hopefully that state will change. Hey, there we go. Great. And so now we have a state in our component here that we can use to filter. And since, like you were asking about the, what if we only want to show 5 or 10 Pokemons? Again, Pokemon collection only takes a list, takes an array of Pokemon objects and displays them. Doesn't care what that array is. So we can take advantage of that by passing it a different array. And I'm going to use the filter method here. And all I'm going to do is say for each Pokemon, I'm just going to call it P for now. Filter is a method on an array that returns a new array that only has the elements for which the function that you give it returns true. So I just want to say P name starts with or begins with, I think it's starts with our filter. And so the array that we're passing into the Pokemon collection is our main array filtered by whatever we get from that input. We don't need to create a new like filtered Pokemons. We can just filter it right there and not worry about all of that. So I think this is gonna work. Hey, look at that. It totally works. And here's our state. Our filter is char. And so state, this is char. So all we're passing into our Pokemon collection is our Pokemon list filtered by this function. And that function just says return true if the name starts with our filter. And that'll do that. Yeah. And so since it's so nice to be able to type, and it changes as you type. And that's because it's refreshing, it's reloading those components every letter I type. Which seems like a lot of work, but React is really smart and really fast about how it does that stuff. So it happens without you even noticing it. And that happens because of this on change. Every time we type, every time something changes in the field, it's going to call this function with that value, which sets our filter. And since our state is changing, it's re-rendering the component. And it's re-rendering it with that new filtered array. So it's doing a lot of work under the hood there. It's watching for changes. When it changes, calling a function. That function is setting a state. When the state changes, it's redrawing this entire list of stuff. And it's doing that filter on that list every time. And again, seems like a lot of work, but it's super fast. And you'll never notice unless you have 2 million things on the page, and then you've got other problems. Megan, yeah.
Could we just look at that code again for the filter? Like, for the search handle change filter, like look at the search. So you like added the on change event and then on, so the target value that's happening is being sent to handle change, right? Which goes back to our Pokemon page, which, where is that? Oh, and on handle change, then it's setting the state as whatever that value is. Is that right?
So it's passing that function straight down into that. So basically when this changes, it's calling set filter with that, only set filter only exists up top, so we have to pass it in.
Okay, and then it's setting the filter as whatever that value is, which we are then filtering the Pokemon's array, like the original array, right?
Yep, we're not changing the original array at all. We're passing the filtered array into that component. So the component only knows about the filtered array. It doesn't know about our original array, but it doesn't care about our original array.
Okay. And then so we're filtering through that original array and saying if the what's the P again? I'm sorry.
That's going to be each of the Pokemon objects.
Okay. And if P name starts with whatever we typed in, basically, then filter it out. Okay. Sorry. I just really need to hammer this.
This is all like, this is the work of like pulling this thread through, because this is a lot of stuff. Like, we have this thing that calls this thing that gets passed into here, and this thing goes up here, and this filter thing's here, and then we pass that filter thing down to this function here, which is doing the filter, and that's passing that down into there, which is, you know, passing this into here, and that's passing each one of those things into this other thing. So it's all this like intricate like threading through stuff, and it is a skill to follow that and keep that in your head while you're doing it. And that's why we break it into these components, because you only have to really think about the component that you're in. And then you can like kind of zoom out and think about it. But it is definitely a skill. It is not intuitive. And so that's why we practice it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hannah.
Can you guys highlight the brochure?
To which one?
Not that to the brochure, the main page.
Over here.
Yeah. So would anything happen if we like capitalize, let's say, yeah, okay.
So we would have to handle that explicitly in our here. We would say like, oh, if you know, P name to lowercase matched filter to lowercase, or we have to do some logic in there to make it case insensitive.
Another question is what's the difference between the one that they start with? What's the difference between start with and includes?
Includes would do it anywhere. So if we do that, so if we had you know, just the letter O, it would have everything that had an O anywhere in it.
Oh, okay.
As opposed to ones that started with O, if there are any. Yeah. Yeah, that's just string manipulation stuff.
So it doesn't really matter which one we would read for the code talent, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Azani.
Yeah, quick thing about the capital C thing. If you wanted to fix that, would you have to put like I'm just trying to mentally think through that on the code side. Would it be like a kind of like an and or situation, like, or like a if else type of?
Yeah, there are ways to do it. The way that you're gonna see the most is by changing both of the things to lowercase.
Okay.
So it would be like, you know, to I forget what the JavaScript function to lowercase, I think it is. Is that right? Yeah. And then checking here to lowercase. And is that actual JavaScript? I don't know.
All right, maybe not.
Maybe it's a capital C. MDN to lowercase. Yep, it's capital C. There we go. So now we just capital C there. Gotta get stuff.
Right. So what this is doing is it's taking that capital C and then turning it to lowercase before it like thinks through the filter.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically turning both sides to lowercase so it'll match either way.
Yeah.
And this only works with ASCII or Latin languages. Like that's not going to work for I don't know how smart JavaScript is about like Cyrillic and you know, other Unicode languages. So it's that's more advanced stuff. Yeah, Wingdings. Wingdings is just a font, so it would work perfectly with Wingdings. Wingdings is just on the browser side. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions about this? This is like pretty much what you would see on the code challenge. Almost exactly what you'd see, only with different domain, not Pokemon. Yeah, I think the code challenges get stuff, put it on the page, add a new thing with a form, and filter. So if you can get this down, you're gonna have a great time. Azani, yeah.
What you're saying is we should be practicing this one over and over and over again.
100%. Azani, you have another question?
Yeah. And it just slipped my mind that quick. Okay, it'll come back to me.
Okay. Cool. Holly, yeah.
Oh,
Azani, you can go first.
all right, cool. Thank you. I was gonna ask about, I noticed you did useEffect and then you had a fetch, I think when we first went through it. But then there was like, I believe there was another component where you did a fetch and there wasn't useEffect. Am I correct there?
Yep.
Yeah, what informs the difference there?
Yeah, so this is exactly what you would put in a event handler in vanilla JavaScript, right? When you do add event listener, this function would be exactly the same, right? Because handle response would probably add something to an array, and then you'd do your create elements and all that stuff in that. So this function would be exactly the same. The only difference here is that we are attaching it where we're sending it state instead of what's directly in there, and it's attached through a on submit instead of at event listener. So this is just when you want to do a fetch on submit or on a button click or whatever, you put it in that handler. useEffect is, again, when you want something to run when a component renders, and if you only want to do it the first time, you put that empty thing in there. So this initial fetch is, and this doesn't have to be a fetch, right? This could be anything. We just happen to be wanting to do a fetch when the page loads. So useEffect is when you want something to do on page load or component load, put it in the useEffect. If you want something to happen on an event like a submit or button click, put it in that event handler.
Yeah, it's just kind of like the events is like a main effect, but the just render everything is the side effect case.
Yeah, yeah, basically, yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. Cool. Holly, yeah.
Hey, yeah, sorry. Would you mind going back to the search.js real quick? Okay, so what the fuck then? All right. Yeah, thank you.
Steven, yeah.
Something I've that we're doing in this that's kind of helpful is whenever you go through like a section, going through like the flow of data like in a step-by-step, like after you've composed it and answered some questions and gone through it, but going through a step-by-step. I believe Megan's asked a couple of those questions, but which are really helpful. And for future ones, it's really good.
Yeah, and that's what React is all about, the data flow. React is all about what is my data, where am I sending it, and what happens when it changes. How am I displaying it when it changes? And so like just being able to follow those threads, that's it. And the rest is just syntax. Which just syntax. That's getting the syntax down is good.
Yeah, because with sometimes with the examples and stuff, we go here and there, and just to reel us back in, just go back step by step and then continue on. That's good.
Yeah, and again, like that is a way to think about it. And that's definitely a way that like my brain works, is following that thread. But you can also think of it in the kind of like the Lego way, like, oh, I want to do this search thing here. The only thing it cares about is putting that thing on there, and when it changes, calling a function. What it is, we don't care. This form, all it cares about is what's in the form, And when you submit it, do that fetch and send the data back somewhere. And then you're just like plugging those Legos together. For me, it's really helpful to follow it all the way through to all the things. But yeah, different folks think different ways. What other questions do we have about this stuff? Megan.
Mine's more about like how you, if you have any tips for like, because the labs have been telling us to do like think and react and like plot it out. So like if you have any tips for that, but Hannah can totally go first if she has like a more specific question.
Yeah, sure. Hannah, well, you have a question?
A minute, this simple question. I just want to look at the form. Okay, for the land, okay, is it like below 20, the land 28? Yeah, below land 28, you just have to put every variable name to equal with like to reset the.
Oh yeah. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, right now it's not resetting the form. So that would be on the at the end of the handles a bit. I'll do the
Okay.
So actually instead of doing the handle submit, we would do set front equals not equals set front, set back, the other one. So we would actually be setting the data to the empty things instead of resetting the form, which is kind of why I like always kind of think of like setting an object first, because then you can just set the object. But so to reset the form, we'd set the data all back to this, the default ones. Yeah, great question. Yeah. Yeah, because the form is always going to reflect what the data looks like, so we can reset it that way. General tips for sorry, refresh my memory. General tips for which?
Just like the thinking and react, like how, they give you some deliverables and you're like, because like I said, I really struggle with like where or what to put where. So I don't know if you like, if that just becomes more intuitive with practice or like, yeah.
Especially when you're breaking it down yourself. Yeah, just kind of like thinking like, oh, this is a component because its job is to display things. This is a component because its job is to display that piece of information. This is a component because it has this one function. This is a component because it has that one function. And then that's kind of like the Lego brick strategy of I'm going to figure out what each of my little pieces is, and then I'm going to figure out how to click them together and wire them together. And that just comes through practice.
Okay. And like, if it does more than one thing, it should be like a separate component.
Yeah, or like a component that contains more different components. Yeah, each thing, like this form is probably about as big as you want to get. But yeah, breaking stuff into, oh look, I have the 3 different parts. They all kind of work together through this state I have here. But it's just breaking things into parts and then plugging them in.
Okay. And is the Pokemon form, is that broken down anymore? I can't remember the exact
I think that's
code.
just the form.
It's just the bringing in the UI thing. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Cool. This is a lot of stuff. This is a week's worth of stuff all hooked up together. Yeah, practice things that look like this, and you're gonna do great. Lots of all the questions indicate to me that you have enough to understand which questions to ask, which is great. So that's always good to see. Oh, Kimberly, speaking of questions.
Okay, going back to what you said about practice this, would you I know this is going to sound really bad, but I'm going to ask it. Would you recommend skipping the labs that go over the specific pieces of it and just practicing this because this has everything that it has in those pieces of lab? Or would you say do the labs
Yeah, so I mean the labs are theoretically going deeper into each individual piece. So if you're like, I don't even know what state is, go back to that lab. If you're like, I don't know how to pass a function in to make things change, then check out that, because they're going to drill into each piece. But if you kind of like have a good handle on what all the pieces are, and it's just a matter of how they all fit together, then yeah, this is a good practice.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions before we wrap it up? All right. I will post this video in the usual places. Office hour will be after lunch, but feel free to post questions in the channel and we'll hook you up. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you all in just a little bit.